Congratulations, you've been born in the Roman Empire. Unfortunately, you weren't born into a wealthy family. Your dad isn't a senator, you don't own a massive villa, and there definitely isn't a marble statue of you sitting in the town square. Instead, you've somehow ended up here, on a Roman warship. A giant wooden vessel packed with sailors, soldiers, officers, and enough sweaty men to make you immediately reconsider every decision that brought you here. And here's the thing. Life aboard this ship changes massively depending on your position. At the bottom, you're following orders and doing the jobs nobody else wants. At the top, you're commanding ships worth enormous amounts of Roman money and potentially deciding the outcome of entire battles. So today, you're going to experience your life at every rank on a Roman Empire ship. We're starting right at the bottom, and trust me, you don't want to stay there. Welcome aboard. Your first job is simple. Sit down, grab an oar, and start rowing. That's pretty much it. You are now part of the ship's engine. Except the engine has feelings and back pain. One thing movies often get wrong is that Roman naval rowers weren't automatically enslaved people chained permanently to their benches. Depending on the period and circumstances, many were free men, citizens, provincials, or paid crewmen. Which sounds good, until you remember what your actual job is. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other rowers, repeating the same movement again and again and again. The ship's officers don't particularly care that your arms hurt. The enemy fleet isn't going to stop because you've developed a blister. And if the ship needs maximum speed, everyone rows harder. There's a rhythm being called out. You need to stay with it, because if everyone around you is moving together and you suddenly decide to freestyle, you're going to become extremely unpopular. But there are some advantages. You're fed. You're part of an organized Roman crew. And when you're not actively fighting or traveling at speed, life isn't necessarily constant rowing. The real problem begins when someone spots another ship on the horizon, because suddenly you hear orders being shouted. The deck comes alive. Marines prepare their weapons. The ship changes direction. And then somebody tells you to row faster, much faster. Because Roman naval combat can involve trying to ram an enemy vessel. So while the soldiers upstairs are preparing for glory, you're underneath them absolutely fighting for your life with a giant wooden stick. And if everything goes well, you survive. If everything goes badly, well, wood doesn't have a fantastic relationship with fire, and neither do you. Congratulations! You've survived long enough for a slightly better job. You've escaped the rowing bench. Your spine sends its regards. Now you're part of the general ship crew. And suddenly you realize something. There is an unbelievable amount of work required to keep a wooden ship functioning. Ropes need managing. Sails need adjusting. Equipment needs moving. Damage needs repairing. Supplies need organizing. Water needs watching carefully. And somebody has to keep the deck from becoming a complete disaster. That somebody is now partially you. When the weather is calm, your life isn't terrible. You're above deck. You can actually see the ocean. You've got fresh air. Occasionally, you might even enjoy yourself. Then, the weather changes. Now you're holding onto a rope while the entire ship moves beneath you. Rain is smashing into your face. Someone is screaming instructions. You have absolutely no idea what's happening. And Neptune appears to have developed a personal problem with you. There are no engines, no GPS, no weather radar. Everything depends on seamanship, experience, and the crew working together. You also learn very quickly that ropes are extremely important. There are ropes everywhere. At this point, you're convinced the Roman Empire is being held together entirely by rope. But after enough time aboard, you become useful. You know where equipment belongs. You understand the ship. You can react quickly when orders are given. You're no longer the confused new guy, which means Rome rewards you with more responsibility, naturally. You're moving up. Now you've got an actual specialized job aboard the vessel. Depending on the ship, experienced crewmen handle things like steering, sails, navigation, maintenance, and signaling. Let's say you're working closer to the men responsible for steering. Roman ships can use large steering oars rather than the modern central rudder you're probably imagining. And suddenly your job matters quite a lot, because the captain can scream, "Turn!" But someone still has to make the ship actually turn. Mess this up during normal sailing and everyone gets annoyed. Mess this up during battle, and you've potentially just introduced the front of your ship to the side of another ship at considerable speed. Navigation is also a very different world. You aren't opening Google Maps and typing, "Carthage." Roman sailors rely heavily on landmarks, experience, the coastline, winds, and knowledge of the sea. Sailing at night or in poor weather can become much more dangerous. And unlike your first days aboard, people are now relying on you to know what you're doing. But at least you're becoming somebody. The new crewmen ask you questions. Officers actually recognize your face, and you've mastered the most important skill in the Roman Navy, looking extremely confident even when something has gone horribly wrong. Right, you've decided ropes aren't exciting enough, so you've become a Marine. Your workplace is still a ship, but your job description is essentially, wait until we get close to another ship and then go fight everyone on it. Fantastic career choice. Roman naval warfare often turned sea battles into something resembling land combat on floating wooden platforms. Marines could carry shields, armor, and weapons and prepare to board enemy vessels. So while the sailors are controlling the ship, you're standing on deck waiting, and waiting, and waiting. Then suddenly, impact. Ships come together, hooks and lines can be used, men start shouting, missiles may be flying between vessels, and now you're expected to climb onto a moving enemy ship while carrying military equipment. This is the moment you begin questioning why you didn't stay with the ropes. But Roman Marines are dangerous precisely because Rome is extremely comfortable with one particular solution to problems. Send infantry at it. Enemy army? Infantry. Rebellion? Infantry. Enemy ship? Apparently also infantry. If your vessel can close the distance and create an opportunity to board, you're turning naval combat into something Roman soldiers understand very well. Close-range fighting. Your status is higher than the basic labor aboard the vessel, but your risk level has also increased dramatically. The rower is hoping the enemy doesn't reach the ship. You're actively preparing to go meet them. Still, survive enough battles and people start respecting you. You might receive a share of rewards. You gain experience. And most importantly, you've got incredible stories when you return home. Although you'll probably exaggerate all of them. You've survived long enough that Rome has made the questionable decision to put you in charge of other people. Welcome to the officer ranks. Your life has changed. You're no longer waiting for somebody to tell you which rope to pull. You're now the person doing the yelling. And it feels fantastic for about 12 minutes. Then you realize that being responsible for people means every stupid thing they do is now partially your problem. Crew discipline? Your problem. Orders? Your problem. Preparation? Your problem. Somebody misplaced important equipment? Somehow also your problem. Junior officers and experienced specialists help translate the commander's intentions into actual actions. Because a ship cannot function with one man standing at the back yelling, "Sail better!" Someone has to organize the crew. Someone has to ensure orders are understood. Someone needs to maintain discipline. You're now caught in the beautiful middle management position that has existed for thousands of years. The commander gives you an order. You give it to the crew. The crew complains about you. You complain about the commander. civilization continues. But there are benefits. Your living conditions may be better. Your authority is greater. You're more respected. And you're probably not spending the entire day performing the most exhausting physical work. You've also learned enough about naval warfare to understand just how complicated commanding one of these ships actually is. Which brings us to the man responsible for the entire vessel. You've made it. You're now commanding the ship. This sounds incredible. And compared with rowing? It absolutely is. You have authority. Men follow your orders. You have status. You might even have better quarters. Admittedly, better quarters on an ancient warship is a pretty low bar, but we'll take it. Your responsibilities now include the vessel itself, its crew, and its mission. You need to think about supplies, weather, navigation, crew discipline, enemy movements, the condition of the ship, and what your superior officers expect from you. Imagine managing hundreds of people. Except your office is floating. There's no email, and if your project fails, pirates might stab you. During battle, your decisions can determine whether everyone aboard survives. Do you approach? Withdraw? Try to ram? Attempt boarding? Follow another vessel in formation? Your ship isn't operating alone anymore. You're part of something larger. And that means you need to follow signals and coordinate with other commanders. One badly positioned ship can create problems for everyone around it, so you're constantly watching. Flags, signals, nearby vessels, enemy movements, wind, coastline, everything. And because you're the commander, there's another wonderful feature of the job. If you win, Rome is brilliant. If you lose, interesting. Let's discuss exactly whose fault this was. Now we're getting serious. You've risen beyond commanding a single vessel. You're a navarch. At various points in Roman naval organization, navarchs could hold senior command responsibilities over groups of ships. You're not worried about whether one sailor tied a rope correctly anymore. You're thinking about multiple vessels, formations, coordination, orders, logistics, and where your ships need to be. This is where naval warfare starts feeling less like sailing and more like an enormous strategy game. Except every little piece on the board contains actual people. You need captains to understand your instructions. You need ships arriving where they're supposed to. You need supplies. You need intelligence about the enemy. And you need to make decisions before you necessarily have perfect information. Communication is also painfully slow compared with today. You can't call another ship. You can't send them a message saying, "Hey mate, swing around the left." You're relying on visual signals, predetermined instructions, messengers, and commanders understanding the plan. Which means if somebody misunderstands you, you're about to have a very interesting afternoon. But your status is significant now. You've gone from pulling an oar to directing the movement of Roman warships. You walk onto a vessel and people know you're important. Nobody asks you to scrub anything. Life is finally looking good. Which obviously means we need to give you even more responsibility. Welcome to the top. You're now dealing with an entire Roman fleet. At the height of Roman imperial power, permanent fleets guarded strategically important waters and naval bases around the empire. And a fleet prefect sits at the top of a major naval command. You are no longer simply a sailor. You're a major Roman official. Your responsibilities can include thousands of personnel, numerous vessels, bases, logistics, and military operations across an entire region. Remember when your biggest concern was keeping your rowing rhythm? Yeah, that's somebody else's problem now. You may be responsible for protecting shipping routes, moving troops, supporting military campaigns, patrolling Roman waters, dealing with piracy, maintaining ships, managing personnel, and making sure Rome continues controlling the sea. And here's the strange part. At this level, you might actually spend plenty of your time not sailing at all. Administration becomes a huge part of your life. Reports, orders, money, supplies, personnel. Congratulations! You've climbed from rower to one of the most important naval officials in the empire. And Rome has rewarded you with paperwork. Humanity truly hasn't changed. But your lifestyle? Completely different. You're wealthy compared with the average crewman. You have enormous authority. You're connected to the Roman military and political system. You may command from a major naval base. And when a fleet leaves harbor, hundreds or thousands of men can ultimately be operating under your authority. But there's still one person above basically everybody. Technically, you're not a naval rank. But this is Rome, and everything eventually leads back to one man, the emperor. You don't personally wake up every morning and check whether the sails have been repaired. You have people for that. You have people who have people for that. Your concern is much bigger. The Mediterranean itself. Roman naval power helps move soldiers, protect supply routes, suppress piracy, and connect distant parts of the empire. A military disaster hundreds of kilometers away can eventually become your problem. A grain shipment being interrupted? Your problem. An enemy fleet appearing? Definitely your problem. A fleet commander becoming suspiciously popular with his soldiers? Extremely your problem. But compared with where you started, life has changed beyond recognition. You began sitting beside an oar. Now you can order entire fleets across the Mediterranean without leaving your palace. And you probably haven't touched an oar in decades. So, which life are you choosing? At the bottom, you're a rower. Your arms hurt, your back hurts, and whenever somebody screams, "Faster!" your day immediately becomes worse. Move upward and you become an experienced sailor, a specialist, a marine, an officer. Eventually, you're commanding your own ship, then groups of ships, and finally, an entire Roman fleet. The higher you climb, the less physical work you're doing, but the more people depend on your decisions. At the top, one mistake might ruin your day. At the top, one mistake might sink 20 ships. Personally, I'd stay somewhere in the middle, important enough to avoid rowing, but not important enough to get blamed when Rome loses an entire fleet. That feels safe. And that was your life, as every rank on a Roman Empire ship. From exhausted rower, all the way to the men controlling Rome's naval power. And if you think life at sea was rough, just wait until you see what life was like inside the Roman army.